Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 112 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. So I had such a great discussion with Karen Phelps Moyer for this episode, and I first learned of Karen's work because she founded Camp Erin, which is a camp for kids ages 6 to 17 who are grieving the loss of a loved one, and they run camps in many locations across the U.S., so please do check them out. Now, Karen is working with widowed people and others to reimagine love after loss. And I had the pleasure of talking with her initially back in episode 51, so I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And since dating and potentially looking for a chapter 2 is a topic that many widowed people grapple with at some point or other, I thought it would be a good time to have Karen back on the show to give us an update. So I hope you enjoy my discussion with Karen Phelps Moyer. Hey there, you may have heard about my book, Future Widow. What's it about, you ask? Well, first, my young husband started feeling dizzy and stopped making sense. And the next thing I knew, I was a widowed parent, desperately wanting to know how exactly do you raise grieving kids anyway? And that's what Future Widow is about. In the book, which has endorsements from many prominent children's grief experts, my family's story is told as a memoir, but I've explicitly worked in themes about parenting grieving kids to make it broadly applicable, including to those who are becoming widowed parents today. Readers have said it's captivating, that they couldn't put it down, that it's an honest and hopeful read, and that it's a must-read for anyone facing loss. Find Future Widow at futurewidowbook.com. That's futurewidowbook.com. And thank you. My guest today is Karen Phelps Moyer. Karen founded a grief camp, Camp Erin, 20 years ago, and has now taken that grief work to another place that you might find interesting. She's now supporting widows in Reimagining love. Karen's joining us today from Southern California. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jenny. It's so good to be back.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this. And, I had to look it up. The last time we talked was way back in October of 2020. It was episode 87, if anybody wants to go and find that. And I'll put a link in the show notes. But we had such a terrific discussion then about the work you're doing now in helping people reimagine love, and particularly helping widows reimagine love, that I wanted to have you back on the show and hear all the latest on what's going on in that world and dating in the pandemic and the things you've been learning as you're working with more and more widows, because it is it's a tricky topic and a difficult one. So I'm very glad you're back to talk with us about it today.
Thank you, Jenny. And I've been following you and your journey. I'm so proud of you and the community that you're building for widows. And as I was following that, I was reflecting on the growth that I've had in my own company working with widows. And I thought, what a great idea to talk again, to circle back, because it is a big deal when you're a grieving widow to even think about finding adult company, which is a phrase coined by Katie Couric, or that D word, dating. And so I decided from the grief work that I did in creating the grief camp that I might be a natural at something like this. And that's how I created my company called Good Morning Gorgeous, where I give clients elite TLC through their journey, reimagining love.
Okay. All right. So I want to follow up on that. Let me mention first, because I did forget to mention, we talked about how you started Camp Erin. And I also interviewed some of your folks there, and it was episode 51. So I'd encourage listeners to go look at that as well if you're interested in grief camps for kids, because it's a very important resource. And this is actually how I first heard of you. When my husband was sick, I first heard of Camp Erin because you guys were being honored as part of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, I think, for the community work with Camp Erin. And my husband was sick in the hospital. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know there was such thing as a grief camp. Like, I need to write this down because sometime I'm going to have to know about this. So anyway, I'm glad that you're...
I'm sorry yet grateful in your journey that you did find Camp Erin, Jenny. I created that camp for kiddos ages 6 to 17 who grieve the loss of a loved one. And so immediately they come together as strangers on a Friday, but sharing a similar tragedy, and that is losing a loved one. And so they find comfort and healing immediately. And I'm grateful because I know by the time they leave on Sunday, as sad as it is on Friday, when they're at the memory board and going through a luminary ceremony on Saturday, that by Sunday, they're much stronger for being at camp. And those are tools for a lifetime. And so I organically created this company because of that work. And the grief journey for families was with a widow friend of mine who had set up a Match.com one night. And then she said, oh, but I deleted it by 6 a.m. I was like, oh no, let's just, grab a bottle of wine and do this again together. And honestly, the beauty of working with my clients from the moment of them just saying out loud, I might be ready, or how does this work, to the evolution of going on their first date, going on their 8th date, and, accepting that your journey moves on and it's okay. This can be a part of it. And I validate that. I give permission for that. I support, handhold through the process. I love what I do. And so from that first client, I was able to reach out to others, and I have received, and I'm grateful to you. People depend on your podcast and learn from you. And I'm happy to be included as part of the journey in grief. And hopefully others will listen to us today and feel comfortable. And, I sit on the back burner of many people's to-do list. And then they reach out and we start with a conversation and we go from there. I meet every client exactly where they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm life coaching them, grief coaching them through their journey where they are. And then we switch it to reimagining love and how we get through to the positive side of the fun stuff. Finding adult company and dating.
Well, let me ask you about, finding adult company. That's an interesting phrase, right? And so I think a few minutes ago, you mentioned that Katie Couric had maybe introduced that to us and as distinguished, somehow different from dating. Can you tell us like what it would talk about the terminology here and why this is important?
Well, you've been married for a long time to one person. Your last date, for example, I have a client who went on her first date this past week for the first time in 37 years.
Oh, wow.
Lost her husband tragically last spring. And you want to call it a date? I mean, dating was like what we did in high school and college. And so once you've been in a resolved marriage, even if you're divorced, long-term breakup, it's really hard to say the word date. So I love, and honestly, I think it comforts my widow clients when I mention that. It's like, we're not talking about date. We're not using that word. We're talking about adult company. Because that's what it comes down to for so many. It's the loneliness. It's wanting to share your life with somebody.
And I wonder if that makes it maybe, I don't know, feel just a touch less scary or just a touch less forbidden. I don't know if that's the right word, but
100%. And I have to be honest, I think widows versus widowers is a different story. I can speak on behalf of widows because that's mainly my clientele.
So women who've been widowed.
Right. And that is, we think too much. So if I'm in your head and we get to know each other really well, I go back to your first boyfriend. I want to know about what you were attracted to, what happened in your relationships. I want to know all about your marriage and that relationship, because we are going to get you in a really good, healthy place. And you are going to tell me all of your non-negotiables that I'm going to keep you accountable to. You are going to create your perfectly imperfect significant other that you would like as adult company.
Huh.
I'm going to hold you accountable to that as well. And then we're manifesting exactly what you want. So you feel safe and you feel comfortable. And I am your friend in this journey. So you're not doing it alone. And so when you say to me, you're getting ready and you're so nervous, and, I always help people style them, just whatever they feel comfortable with when we get to this point of going out. And, if you're nervous, we talk about that, and it's just coffee. It's just dinner. Try to be very, very present in this moment. You're not thinking about the past and consumed with the guilt that you've created in your own thoughts. You're very present in the date, the adult company time that you have with this new person. And you're not thinking about, could this person be my forever person? Could this be, you just don't go there. You don't worry about all that stuff. You just stay really present. And so that's what I give everybody, these tools on how to do that. And we've worked hard to get to that point. It doesn't happen overnight.
So it sounds like, and then so the person, it might be helpful to say to themselves, okay, I am focused. I'm having coffee with this person this afternoon. And that is the scope of my, I'm not going to worry about all is this something means something later or whatever, but I'm just focusing on, am I enjoying or not enjoying coffee with this person today?
You are, and you are loving yourself for where you are right now. And you are letting that person shine. The person across from you is getting to know that person. So there's a lot of thoughts that go with this and feelings, and they're all real. Thoughts aren't necessarily real. I'm a certified thought coach, so that's a whole nother thing we can talk about. But I do put my clients through, if necessary, a release and replace exercise. And so if we've stored this thought that I will never find anybody else to love as much, we have to replace that with, I am ready to reimagine love, find adult company. So you're letting that go. That part of you is still part of you, but it shouldn't hold you back from continuing your journey.
Something you just said strikes me. You said reimagining love a number of times here, which, makes sense to me, but I just thought about it kind of one level deeper. Reimagining is such a nice word because you're not necessarily talking about replacing someone. You're not talking about trying to duplicate whatever you had. Talk to us a little bit about reimagining. What does that mean in the context of being widowed and thinking about potentially finding a partner at this point?
Well, first of all, we're human, and love is it's a head to toe thing, and there's attraction, and, we're allowed to be with others, on that level. And so again, I'm that person that's giving you permission. And I absolutely believe that everyone should and can reimagine love. And it pertains to widows. We're speaking divorce, long-term breakup, domestic violence victims, people who've been sick and don't know, how to date again. And so I believe that everyone deserves to reimagine love. And you're absolutely right. We are not replacing. In our non-negotiables, we put, this person has to accept me for who I am, where I am. This person has to love my kids. And this person has to honor my loved one that, is gone. And they're out there. They exist.
You mean people who are willing and able and excited about forging that type of relationship?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so once you put yourself out there and you see that, it allows you that space. I constantly encourage different ways to celebrate your loved one with your kids. And I know you have a list of ways to do that through holidays or other times that trigger, you don't take down your pictures because you're bringing somebody else in the house, that kind of a thing. There is protocol for how you tell the kids that you're ready. I recently worked with a widow. She had lost her husband 3.5 years prior. Trying to remember how she, through social media, had me on her back burner and finally just pulled the trigger, and we just start the conversation. It wasn't till about 3 months later that and this is what I love, is we sit together and we put together your profile, but we needed to work on some things. And that's where my grief experience and the resources that I can find people really solidifies this connection with me and my client. I have empathy as if, and I'm not a widow. I know different times that can trigger the holidays. We're not talking finding adult company in December over the holidays. We'll, in the new year, when it's a renew kind of place that all of us are in. And so we put her profile together, and what happens is we go on different matches that we pay for, and there's all kinds of those out there.
You mean like the different dating apps?
Yeah, they can specify what your interests are, and then everything comes to me. So I am sifting through your matches. This is the exhausting part for people. It can be encouraging and it can be discouraging. And I'm there to sift through them because I know your non-negotiables. And so then we play through that together, and then the messaging, and then the talking on the phone, and maybe a Zoom, and then just coffee. And so for her in particular, without getting emotional, and this is like, I am so happy and excited for my clients when they get to that place, because many times we would Zoom, just me and her, and she would say, I'm having a bad day and I have these thoughts. We journal a lot. We go through different exercises, as I mentioned, and then you feel comfortable in yourself and everything goes well. There's no but after it. I stop you. Like, I had the best time, blah, 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 blah. And you want to say, but, and I'll stop you because I want you just to be present in that moment of how you feel right now.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. A few minutes ago, you said something about, which I wanted to follow up on, talking to your kids. And I suppose it might make a difference if the kids are very small or medium sized or teenagers or young adults. But do you have some, like, how do you work with clients who come to you and say, oh, my kids will never accept me dating, or I don't know how to talk to my kids about dating, or, anything along those lines?
So I need to back it up with you as my client, and we need to talk about your journey. It's your journey. Whether you have the title of being mom, being sister, being daughter, being a neighbor, all of their opinions and how they're going to feel about what your journey is needs to be in a box because it's your journey and you deserve to reimagine love. So if you are in this place, then we're going to sit in this place, and that's authentic. And then each of our kids is going to be different and react differently. And like you said, ages are going to be different. Every kid at the end of the day wants their parent happy. Happy mom, happy house. It's real. It's true. No matter the trauma, everything that's going on around you. Other family members, friends, neighbors, whatever they're going to think. I really try to have the client think about their journey and not let all these other things come in to stop you. And then there's all kinds of research on when it's a good time. Again, it's me meeting my client where they are. I have clients who have adult kids who are out of the house. You've got sons who are going to be more protective or daughters who are going to be more protective. But at the end of the day, it's your journey. It's your happiness. So we can meet that kid where they are and express, this might be hard for you. I need you to be happy for me. That's a whole different way of looking at, you're advocating for your journey. You're not allowing all of these other factors to stop you and hold you back. And so I would prefer to look at my client and where the kids are, and then just walk through it with them, one by one. I can, definitely you're not bringing them home on date 3 when you have young kids, that kind of a thing. You're always surrounding yourself with a village of others so that the kids don't feel that you're the only pipeline to their love and to their happiness and to their journey. And maybe it's hard for them and you give them somebody else to talk to about it. Bring in a therapist. You, as my client, are mom, and you have your own journey in reimagining love. The kids, it always works out. It really does. The harder thing is when you don't act authentic and when you're not completely honest. The timing of the whole story is more important than anything. But hiding things, kids need to trust. You're not losing mommy because there's somebody else around. It's enhancing our family. We're not ever, losing the memory. No one's replacing anybody. We have permission to do this, and instead of making excuses for it, that requires work. And if you're holding on to that, like, I can't date, my kids will never accept it. You and I have to work through that. I'm a life coach, a thought coach, love coach. And I have experience too. I was married for a long time and divorced. And I have that similar journey in kids and reintroducing, new love. And it's the empathy and the compassion that you have authentically, but it has to start with you. You have to love you and respect you.
Well, and it sounds like some of it then is in the framing and in being thoughtful about how you frame it and assuring them that you're not replacing the other parent, those kinds of things. And maybe not, instead of shying away from those discussions, maybe being thoughtful about discussing their concerns.
For sure. I'm looking through my book right now, of my clients, and I have a client who recently told her senior in high school son, prefacing it with, I'm not sure where you are with this. Don't assume that your kids will be against it either. That's our thought for them. We're assuming that they're going to be against it. I'm not sure where you are with this, but I am ready. I am ready to explore this. And
have that discussion with them.
Yep. This is not replacing, any of that. And honestly, kids are so resilient. They're so wrapped up in their own lives that, we've made it a bigger deal than it really is.
This is it's not reminding me exactly, but I stumbled across I think it was like in a Reddit or some weird place. I have a Google alert on Future Widow because that's the title of my book, right? And so I want to know if it gets mentioned. But weird stuff pops up when you put a Google alert on the term Future Widow. So this Reddit post popped up, and this guy said something like, "If my wife ever dies, I want my future widow to occupy herself with family and cats instead of going around and, insert vulgar phrase here, right, with a whole bunch of other men." And I was like, whoa, wow, okay. And so then I had to read who responded to that, right? But it made me think about, to what extent is there still judgment or stigma, or are people worried there might be judgment or stigma about dating and, those kinds of things. And I wonder, I read a lot about this in the widow community, but outside the widow community, I mean, do you find that people are worried, like, oh my goodness, what are other people going to think?
Well, imagine me now. I go to a funeral and people know what I do for a living. It's like, but I currently have a client. I'm doing, my clientele is it started with widows and then it's branched out to others. And I am life coaching in a palliative care way, someone who knows that her husband is going to pass. And so we're not even talking about love and reimagine any of that. I've worked with clients before where I life coach them and then they come back to me. And I think that that's great. And I just simplify it. We have stages of grief and everybody goes through the stages differently. So as you're doing your grief work, even if you're divorced, you're grieving the loss of, that family and yourself and who you were then. In our life journey, we're grieving ourselves constantly. We're grieving something constantly. Empty nesting, things like that. So then to be mindful and make you a priority, which if you're a mom and you're a widow, how do you have time for yourself? Well, I'm here to make sure that you are making yourself a priority, because then that's going to make you a better mom. And so if you're working on yourself and you have all this self-work, and then you're realizing along the way your self-worth. When I first meet a widow client, I need to do before and after pictures. Whether we're successful in finding a match or not. I know we have built self-esteem and self-confidence, and you recognize your self-worth. And there's no value you can put on that. All the trauma you've been through, you're recognizing that you can make time for you. All along, you're honoring your loved one. And then you're realizing you can reimagine love.
Right.
It goes with this is your journey. You only have it once. And so you're living for you.
Yeah. Well, I thought this guy's comment was interesting. I was glad to see some of the responders say, dude, like, what are you talking about? Like, don't you want her to be happy? Like if this guy was such a selfish comment.
Exactly.
He's like,
if
I die, my wife should just be happy with cats. I'm like, dude, okay.
Well, and there are a lot of famous celebrity widows out there that are very honest about their journey. And I appreciate them for being very honest about it. There are some widows that go crazy in the dating world, and because they're trying to find themselves. I like to meet my widow where they are. We work on you so that you're ready to manifest. People will recognize that you're different. I have had so many kind comments come back to me, where people feel that I meet them where they are, that I don't rush the process. I focus on how they're healing in their grief.
Right.
If we need to take a pause, we take a pause. I become this support at a very difficult time, where you can really make you the priority while handling everything else.
Right.
And, nothing makes me happier when I hear back from a widow coming from what adult companionship that's turned into a date to, hand holding and maybe a kiss, and just them feeling, with the lack of a better term, alive again and human again.
Right.
Nothing satisfies me more. I love that for them.
Yeah.
And so what's really important is we just don't think about it so much. Like I said, it's just coffee. and you let it be. And the joy of being able to love another person is joy that you never anticipated ever happening again, but it does happen. And it's something that you're always longing for. You're human. And so again, I'm giving you permission, and, you know, you get to be present with yourself and then share it with somebody else.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. I think it's great that, you know, you're talking about spending so much focus on, you know, on you, the person, not you, but I mean, you, your client, as far as that aspect, and not like, just like the mechanics of dating or the mechanics of the various dating tools or whatever, but it's like with that foundation of working on yourself first, then the person maybe is ready to, as you say, reimagine what their future, including what love might look like.
And it's building confidence. I'm going to be honest with you. So my very first client, we had success, never imagined, honestly. And then that was for a while, and that relationship went away. And then she started doing her own Match.coms. And this is 3 years later, where she has enough confidence in herself not to be so hard on herself, to find other resources like how to flirt, like the different levels of flirting and what that means. Why guys don't ask for a second date. You know, what is it about me? So she's learning about herself. That same person 3 years ago never would be where she is 3 years if we didn't do the work to get her to where we were in our first success.
And so you mentioned building confidence. That sounds like it's a big part of that.
If, like I said, if I could take a before our first day, and then, because I motivate, I inspire, we do self-care, we do mindfulness things. I send you all kinds of resources and books and podcasts and, you know, just a snapshot of a picture. And you don't even know you're building your own self-esteem and self-confidence. Jenny, you know this. It's so raw. You're in shock when you lose your loved one. And even if you're going through all the stages of grief and you're still raw, how in the world are you going to have the energy to do any of this?
Yeah. Without
hiring somebody that can really help you, who knows it, who understands it.
Right.
And I am on top of the world. My kids are so cute. I mean, can you imagine, like, their mom is this love coach now, and I'm helping widows reimagine love. And it's like, but it all makes sense because of the grief work that I did. And now I get so excited. They don't know my clients' names, but they'll know some of the journey. And I'll say, you know, she's going on a date tonight. And everyone's excited because that's how it should be. And I want others around you excited. Right. And most of my clients, you know, I think that's the hardest thing, is telling your best friends, even, you know what, I'm ready to put myself out there. And what does that look like?
Yeah. One thing we haven't really talked too much about yet is the fact that we are still in a pandemic. How does that like affect all of this, or what people are doing or not doing, or what they might or might not be thinking about? Like, how does that come into play here?
Right. So in the last couple of years, I've been helping people reimagine love. I've done a little bit of consulting for matchmaking companies. And so I've obviously been following the whole dating scene and dating app. And it's actually the best it's ever been.
Really?
And me personally, coming into it before the pandemic, I don't let my clients do the swiping dating apps. We pay because then the other clients are paying. I have matchmaking companies to refer you to that I trust, but it was out of control, definitely out of control. And so the pandemic has really helped us become more mindful of ourselves and who we want to hang out with. And you have to take the time in your messaging, in your Zooming, in your distance. You don't have to worry about, do I kiss them on the first date because everybody's in masks kinds of thing. But you're really getting to know the person.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And the level of attraction is easier to notice and recognize more quickly than
because
just in the hustle and bustle of, meeting somebody for a drink or how many dates can I put together this week?
You mentioned Zoom. So, and maybe this is just talk to us about what people are doing these days. Is a Zoom first date kind of like an expected part of dating right now or not? Or is it kind of, sometimes yes, sometimes no? Like, how does that all working?
Well, there's the level of attraction and the law of attraction, right? And so somebody may sound really good via messaging and text and even in their profiles, truthfully. I read so many that I can see sometimes right through them. But I think it's so much better to feel the energy and the synergy in a FaceTime or a Zoom. And then obviously you can feel or know. That doesn't mean, and this is, if you've been married a long time and you had the best marriage and the sex life was great, there's just no way I'm going to feel attracted to anybody else. And this is happening with one of my widow clients, because you go off the picture on these sites and then what they write, you read, and then you have to have conversation. If people become more attractive, because you're going to feel them. If you're having the coffee, outing, you're going to feel, their compassion to where you are as a widow. That's the other thing that comes up often. I have a lot of clients who get stuck in, are they going to honor my loved one? And you feel that naturally. It's definitely not the topic of conversation. The first couple of times that you're together, unless they feel like they need to bring it up and you feel comfortable talking about it. I have a client who recently had one of their first outings. He said, you had the best marriage. How will you ever be able to move on from that? And she didn't focus on her husband. She focused on herself. And she said, I'm ready to reimagine. And then it doesn't even have to have a conversation, if that makes sense. She really focused on herself and not who she was as a couple with her loved one who's gone. It's pretty deep stuff. And I imagine your head spins because this is you. And at the end of the day, you follow your heart. And when you're working on yourself and being mindful and self-care and you're following your heart, everything works out. And I so believe, because I did this, I had to work really hard on myself to go through my journey. And that's what we do, is we work really hard on you. And then everything else falls into place.
Yeah. Makes sense. I was going to ask what we've forgotten to cover, but that almost sounds like a great wrap-up point. Have we forgotten anything important here that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so, Jenny. I think it's great that you put it out there. Like I said, it's a tough thing for people. And I sit on a lot of back burners, and in November and December get many messages, beginning of the year, first of the year, I'm in, I'm going to do it. I'm ready. And I push it more in February than I do in January, because we're always going through transitions and life is difficult. It's difficult in COVID. It's not the normal. So add that to, trying to grieve and support your kids and then reimagine love. that's heavy. But when you come to Good Morning Gorgeous and hire me, we make this a really fun, happy journey where I'm always there for you. I'm truly accessible all the time. And I appreciate you for letting me put this back out there again, share some of the success stories, and share with people that I'm available, and I'll meet you exactly where you are in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can say, from having talked with you several times now and gotten to know you, I think I can see how it would be fun to work with you, and a very comfortable, affirming process, and thought-provoking too, which I think is important. So thank you for doing this, and for coming on and talking to my listeners. And I hope that anybody who might be thinking about reimagining love, or thinking about reimagining love, or just thinking about themselves and kind of where their future might lie.
There's that. And then there's the angle of, if you know people who are widows and widowers, it would be a really nice gift to them, because you never know what to do for people. And then you're giving your, thumbs up that you're cool with, their journey and where it's going to go. And then you're basically hiring a love coach, a life coach for them, and someone who has extreme compassion and grief. So spread the word. I'm here. I love my work. You can find me on LinkedIn and through Good Morning Gorgeous or Karen Phelps Moyer. And Jenny, I applaud you and thank you.
Well, thank you. This has been terrific. And tell us, what's your website where people can find you?
goodmorninggorgeous.com.
Okay, terrific. Well, Karen, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Sure.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Karen Phelps Moyer as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 112. And a shout out today to my listeners in Hong Kong. Listeners in Hong Kong recently moved into the 10th spot in terms of the top 10 countries with listeners of the Widowed Parent podcast. So thank you for listening and supporting the show. Rounding out the top 10, of course, the United States has the biggest number of listeners, which makes sense because I am located here. And after that, we have Canada and Australia and the United Kingdom. So a great big welcome and thank you to all of my listeners in those three countries. And next, rounding out the top 10, we have Ireland, Spain, Germany, Peru, South Africa, and then, like I said, Hong Kong in spot number 10. So welcome. Thank you. Please do tell people that you know about the show. Love to be able to reach out and provide some support to widowed parents, no matter where you are. And if you're not in one of those 10 countries that I mentioned, there are listeners in 86 countries, if you can believe it or not. So thank you for listening. Welcome to all of you. And hopefully I will see you next week. If you're finding the Widowed Parent podcast helpful, please do consider supporting the show. buymeacoffee.com/widowedparent. Really appreciate it, and it's super easy to chip in there. And do remember to pick up your copy of Future Widow at futurewidowbook.com. And most importantly, reach out after you read it and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you for listening. And until next week, remember, you've got this.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.